France has warned the US against retaliation, and the EU has said that they will stand by France on this one. Why is this such a sticking point between the US and Europe?
Well, I think there are global phenomena that we need to, to consider. But when I hear this piece of news, I mean, my first reaction is that it shouldn't happen, because actually the EU should provide a common front. Trade policies are a matter of EU concern, and France should not go along in doing this. Again, it should be a European matter, a EU matter. And having said that, clearly, these days, globalization has changed. It's no longer the globalization we used to have 20 years ago. It's about technology these days. Technology tends to become a monopoly, natural monopoly, because effectively, big tech giants tend to have, a monopoly, quasi-monopoly power globally. Now, it's reasonable that countries want to prevent to be intermediated in the distribution of products like Amazon, Google, or any other company. Now, is it fair for the EU to kind of retaliate or to kind of impose taxes? I think you need to have a global approach. And unfortunately, with trade wars, what was the casualty of all this was the kind of global approach, the multilateral approach. Now it's becoming bilateral. Inevitably, bilateral negotiations lead to some tensions, and that's what we are experiencing right now.
So, Lorenzo, we heard Hannah mentioning just before that the US Trade Representative's Office has been holding a public hearing today about this proposed action. What do we expect to come out of that? Presumably some tension between US tech companies and American importers of French and EU goods who could potentially be affected by these tariffs.
Keep in mind that President Trump has put on hold tariffs on the EU. I mean, it's still there. The risk is still there. So I think the risk is that these tensions can escalate. So Trump can actually address the issue with China with a first stage agreement, and then move to the EU and try to find another front, which I don't think will be the case, to be quite honest, because it's a presidential election year. But the risk is still there. And again, this kind of bilateral approach, very much initiated by President Trump, I would say, is a risky matter, because again, it kind of breaks down all the multilateral institutions like the WTO that are there to prevent, to kind of level the playing field globally, not to kind of, introduce muscular exercises in trade policies.
How do you think both sides are losing in this one?
Both are losing, because, when you have a situation in which you have tensions and you have frictions in trade, the global economy is suffering, the countries involved are suffering. And so it's a lose-lose proposition in my view.
All right, well, Lorenzo Kodonyo, many thanks indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.